Hey everybody, Aaron Cowan, Sage Dynamics. This video, we're going to continue our look at rifle grip with the prone position. The prone position is probably one of the most iconic and easily recognizable shooting positions. It's also one of those positions that hasn't changed a whole lot throughout history. Even with the evolution of firearms, the prone position has remained roughly the same. Some people, literally, their first formal instruction is from the prone position. I remember basic training in the Army, we shot prone or foxhole supported. That was it. We did some FAM fire ranges like the gas mask range and things like that where we did select fire standing. But it wasn't until I actually got to my unit and then went to additional schools after that where I started learning how to shoot standing up. Now, following common sense, the default position, that's why the first video in this series I started with standing grip. Then we went to kneeling grip because we're just following gravity down, and finally we're going to get to prone. The reason I do them in that order, most likely to least likely, are you likely to start your engagement in the prone position? Probably not, unless you have time to set up ahead of time. Military law enforcement setting, but in a self-defense situation, is prone going to be immediately applicable? Maybe, but I'd be willing to bet, if I was a betting man, that standing or kneeling is going to come before you get to prone. So we have this progression of positions where we start with the standing, and then we can go to kneeling, following gravity down, and then finally we end in the prone position. Or we might start standing and immediately go to prone. So I want to address the prone position in that context, but also add a little more, well, context again to what exactly we're talking about. So what is the paramount reason for using prone? For me, there's two possibilities. One is stability. I need to make a long-range shot and I have the luxury of time in order to get into a prone position. That prone position will not obscure my target or my threat from me. And those two things, they have to happen because prone is completely functionally useless if by assuming the prone position I lose the ability to actually see my threat. My second reason is use of cover, use of concealment. Those are obviously very important, but they go back to that first reason. If I'm going to use cover, but by using that cover I cannot engage my threat, is the prone position right for me? Chances are not. Use of cover, use of concealment, the ability to see your target is paramount to the use of prone. Now, assuming the prone position's pretty intuitive, everybody knows how to lay down. Everybody knows how to lay down on their stomach. But it does have some particulars when we talk about where we're coming from and where we're going to. So if I start from a standing position, if I'm engaging my threat like that, I'm going to follow gravity down. My next position will probably be kneeling unless I need to go immediately to prone in an emergency situation. If I'm just going to follow gravity down, I'm going to start from standing, I'm going to go to my kneeling position. At this point, I can unmount the rifle, muzzle up. I may have to swim out of my sling if my slack's tainted in, because once I get down there, it might start to choke me. If you don't run your sling out when you have your hands on the rifle, it's probably a good idea to just immediately swim out of it, just so you don't have to deal with that. And then I'm just going to use my support hand to base, move rearward, plant, set in, and I have assumed the prone position. Now, obviously, if I had the luxury of, say, a bipod, then this would be different. I'm going to cover that. But just using the rifle as it stands, you'll notice that my magazine has a mag pod on it. There's a reason for that. It's because I like to use the magazine as a monopod. And one of the myths that just will not die is that you can't put your magazine on the deck. Even the Army has finally admitted, yes, you can, in fact, put a magazine on the deck, and it will not induce a malfunction if you have a good magazine. Here's the deal. The thing about magazines are they're perishable items. If your magazine is inducing malfunctions, throw it away or write training on it and only use it for training and practice, just so it induces that malfunction and gives you a real full power malfunction as opposed to trying to set them up yourself. I have a couple magazines like that. They're from Vietnam. They work great to cause malfunctions, not so great for anything else. You can, in fact, put a magazine on the deck. Now, this is a Gen 2 PMag. It's brand new, pretty much. So we're not going to really demo with that, but I have here in my back pocket a metal OK Industries USGI. This is like pumpkin spice and Ugg boots. It is the most basic of magazines. This is the magazine that everybody says you cannot put on the deck. So I'm gonna put it on the deck. Let's see what happens. It's still working. That's so weird. It's not doing anything wrong. It just, the gun just keeps shooting. This is crazy. Why does that keep happening? I don't understand what's going on here. I've ran out of ammunition, which by definition is a malfunction. So I wanted to get that out of the way because I do talk about using the magazine to support the rifle. So now that we've kind of crushed that myth, and again, can it induce a malfunction? Absolutely. How old are your magazines? How well are your magazines serviced? Do you PMCI your stuff? Anything can happen. Guns can malfunction, but you can put a mag on the deck if you have to and use it to support the rifle. So that myth, which has been pervasive since Vietnam when it actually used to be the truth, isn't true anymore. And even the Army, I'll throw it up there, has finally been like, hey, you know what, guys, go ahead, put your mags on the deck, it's cool. So now that we got that out of the way, let's talk technique. What is my grip gonna be down here? What can I do to best support the rifle? If for whatever reason, terrain dependent, I'm not able to put the magazine on the deck, then I have to use my support hand in some way to support the rifle. Old school technique is literally just this. I'm gonna use my elbow. I'm not a big fan of my elbow because, like I said in the kneeling video, it is a ball, it does roll, but on the ground, I can kind of like dig a little pocket for it maybe, unless I'm on asphalt or concrete, that's an option. But if I can't put the mag on the deck, I can't put the mag on the deck. Again, if I can put the mag on the deck, that's what I'm going to do. But if I can't, just saying if I can't, I'm just gonna set the elbow down, I'm gonna create my little V support here, and I'm just going to lay the rifle in the palm of my hand. I'm not gonna apply any direct pressure on it. I'm gonna use that hand just to support the gun. The only time I'm gonna move is if I want to adjust my natural point of aim. Instead of trying to fight the gun and exert force on the rail and on the rear of the rifle and on the stock, I'm literally, if I need to move to the left, I'm just gonna move my entire body to the left. If the terrain allows me to do that, if the position allows me to do that. If I have to fight the gun, then I'm just gonna have to accept that I'm gonna induce that stress on the rifle and I'm gonna have to shoot through it. But if I have the luxury of being in prone and the luxury of taking a little bit of time to readjust my natural point of aim, it makes for a much more stable shooting platform if I just adjust where I'm going with it. Now, in this position, just based on our body mechanics, it doesn't make sense to run our hand out really, really far because that induces a little bit of instability. Now, arm lengths are different, rail lengths are different, the equipment you have on your rifle may kind of dictate that, but I can still kind of comfortably shoot with my arm this far out, but it's so much easier for me to just come back in here and support the rifle like that. Potential fatigue points is the longer I maintain this position, and if I have to exert stress on the rifle to change my point of aim, the quicker I'm going to fatigue, the quicker I'm going to start to get the wobbles. So that's a problem. What if I can put the mag on the deck? Well, then life just got really, really easy, because now this hand only needs to help guide the muzzle and settle it for recoil. Can I bring it back here and do this? I see people do that sometimes. I mean, I get it, I guess, but we're not dealing with a bipod support here. We're dealing with a monopod. We still need more support up front on the gun. So in this position, I'm gonna either keep my hand where it was if I was using my elbow, basically just down here, or I'm gonna come into kind of like a C-clamp grip, just like this, and that helps me flatten the muzzle. It's almost like thumb over bore for people who like that, but it's back here. This position, as the muzzle jumps, depending on your muzzle device and any number of other factors, it's quicker for me to be able to resettle the rifle, and I can shoot off the magazine all day long, provided, you know, I know that my magazines are good. I use quality magazines. That's an important part as well. And I've settled into the position to where, well, of course, your rifle's quality matters too. I've seen some out-of-spec lowers that will induce malfunctions to the mag on the deck, but it's still pretty rare, especially these days. It's not something you're really gonna have to worry about. Obviously, trust but verify. If you've never shot your rifle with your mag on the deck, today's a good day to start and just see if it's going to work. The magazines that you're going to load your self-defense ammo in, the ones that you're going to trust your life to, make sure you go out and vet their ability to fire on the deck, just in case. I mean, to me, that's just smart practice. A big question about the prone position, one of the biggest points of contention when it comes to teaching it, is, what do I do with my legs? Now again, this video is about the grip, but your body's comfortability and your actual physical torso and leg position are important to that, because if you're unstable anywhere in your body, it's going to translate to the rifle, which is ultimately where it grips at and where it grips there to support. So when it comes to legs, there's a couple different techniques. I prefer a very basic one because it works in almost all environments. Now, We want to introduce as much stability as we can in our body, and we want to keep our pelvis from opening any gaps to the ground, just because that's going to create an instability. So bringing one knee up may work for some, but it probably isn't going to work for anybody else, or I should say other people. Why is the knee up a thing? There's some people where just based on gear and equipment and terrain and everything, where bringing that knee up can introduce a more stable platform, especially if they rotate their hips to the side, or just rotating your legs to the side altogether and laying your legs flat. We don't want to toe into the ground so much as we want to kick our feet out and lay as flat as possible. That isn't so much concealment, which it does aid in that a little bit, but you know, your head is always going to be higher than your feet. So the feet thing isn't so much a concealment thing as it is a stability thing. We want maximum contact with Mother Earth to aid in providing a stable weapons platform. You don't want to go into what you're thinking about prone. You don't want to kick your legs up like that, because that doesn't give you the stability that you're going to need. So for me, and this is just me, long range shooters, they'll go into very, very specific detail about prone and how to get the most out of your prone position. I'm just talking about just shooting prone quick and dirty, so I'm not going to get into that in this video. But flat, maximum contact with the earth. I want the recoil to be absorbed as much as possible. Obviously, having it pass through your body is advantageous. That's why some people kick their legs off to one side so that energy kind of dissipates. The issue with that is it does introduce stress into one side of the body, so we have that asymmetrical stress situation now, and that could create fatigue issues or control issues on the rifle itself. So when it comes to the leg positioning, I'm pretty much like, just go with your body's natural ability to find a comfortable, stable place and go with that. If it's comfortable, it's probably stable, and if it's stable, it's probably going to help you shoot better. Assuming prone, it's a shooting position that can either be a position that we choose to be in or a position that we're forced into. So like an emergency prone situation. If I don't have the luxury of taking the steps of going from standing to kneeling to prone, then I have to assume an emergency position. Now, my advice to everyone has always been, if you need to get in prone in an emergency, you're just gonna do it, and you won't really so much think about the specific step-by-step techniques. But if you want to talk technique for an emergency prone position, there's two really different ways that you can, well, not really different ways, but there's two different ways you can do it. First one is, remember we talked about that 2-knee down position, we talked about kneeling, that emergency, that speed kneel, that just drop? Well, from here, all I have to do is same thing, unmount the rifle, hand down, now I'm in the prone position. Now, that's pretty quick, but there is a faster way to do it, and I'm sure you've all seen it before. Now, the last technique for assuming prone, talk about the 2 knees down. This one is the emergency prone. This technique's been made popular on catwalks, but all jokes aside, it is an actual technique. There is a technique to it. It is a skill. Again, if you got to get into a position quickly enough, you're probably not necessarily going to remember how you got there, but the technique is sound. But it is terrain and gear dependent, and it can cause injury if you do it wrong. And granted, pain, discomfort, those two are okay. We don't want injury. So again, that's why I prefer to call it emergency prone. And all I'm doing is going from the standing position, because that's where I'm going to start most likely. It'd be a lot easier from kneeling, but starting from standing, all I'm going to do is unmount the rifle. And I want to make sure when I make contact with the earth, I don't make contact with my elbow. So I want to go with the flat of my arm. This arm is going to brace as I make impact with the earth, and I'm literally just going to kick my legs out behind me. It does actually take practice to get used to the idea of going as horizontal as possible and falling to the earth. It's much easier if you have forward momentum to get away with this. But the basic technique is literally, I'm starting here, this arm's ready, off the rifle, kick out. Now I'm on the ground. Now, your range of motion is going to dictate how fast you can do that. You notice I don't do it as fast as some other people do, and that's okay, because body types are different, pre-existing injuries or conditions, range of motion is different. Some people that are watching this video may not be physically capable of doing this technique, and that's okay too. We want to get there if we have to, but again, what is your end goal? What do you need to be physically capable of? So the emergency prone technique is something that we want to know how to do. It's something that we want to have practiced just in case. But again, for the third time, if you have an emergency situation where you have to get to prone as soon as possible, you're probably not going to remember how you got there. I want to talk about bipods because prone and bipods, they go together. If you're one of those dudes that keeps a bipod on his do-everything rifle, then that's cool. You're going to have a bipod, but it does take time to deploy. There is no rapid bipod deployment. You can do it fast, but you're not going to be able to deploy your bipod as fast as you can assume the prone position and use the magazine for support. But say it's a very specific assumption of the prone position, like you're setting in. Then you have time to deploy your bipod. Obviously, I don't have to insult your intelligence. You know how your bipod works, but what is the way to maximize the bipod's usefulness when we're on the ground? All right, so here we are, and I have the luxury of bipod support. Does that change my grip? Yeah, because this hand no longer really needs to hang out up here. I see some people put it on the mag well, and that works. It does actually increase your ability to hold the rear of the rifle steady. But this is that one time where it makes sense to take that hand and bring it back here to help with the stock. I'm gonna put it back here. I can use it as kind of like a sandbag. I can decrease or increase the height of my hand to lower or raise the elevation of the rifle. Or I can use it to hold the rifle up and help stable my position. If I'm using a graduated optic, magnified optic, something with a crosshair, first thing I want to do if I'm on bipod, and again, this isn't really part of this video, but I'm going to talk about it anyway since we're here, is I'm going to get on station, figure out where my desired point of aim is going to be. And if I've got any cant error, if I'm looking at my target and the crosshair is going to the left or the right, I need to use my bipod to fix that. So I'll come out here, kick my little leg out. Now my crosshairs are even across the top, which is what I want. Cant error does affect point of aim, point of impact, which we're going to talk about a little more next. But this is why a really high quality bipod is so important. If you're messing with one of those cheap UTGs or some shit you picked up that has the store's brand name on it, it's probably not going to do what you want it to do when you want it to do it. Baseline is Harris, and then there's some other bipods that have more advantageous features above that, but a Harris bipod is a really good place to start because they're good bipods and they're easy to adjust one-handed on the fly. Last thing I want to talk about is off-axis prone. I bring this up. In fact, I've done a video just on off-axis prone in the past, but it's important because we're talking about prone grip, and this is definitely a usable technique if you know how to use it and you understand that there are some drawbacks to it. What we're talking about is literally rotating the rifle as close to 90 degrees as possible and laying it against the earth. The reason we do that is maybe to shoot underneath super low cover like a low car or maybe a truck, but the target's closer and you got to get that angle up. If you're running 30 round mags, it's hard to go prone and shoot underneath most vehicles, so being able to go to this off-axis position is definitely beneficial. Even if you roll into like a fetal position and brace the rifle between your knees and shoot that way, this is still off-axis. We're still talking about laying the rifle 90 degrees, maybe a little less, maybe a little bit more, on its side to shoot. If I have proper hand support, then what I can do with the rifle in that position is going to be different than what I can do if I'm in the fetal position. But the main thing that we need to talk about, besides the grip, which I'll get into, is the point of aim, point of impact shift is going to happen. It's unavoidable. And I'll put up a handy little graph right now to show you kind of what happens, but basically, if I roll the rifle on its side, the bullet is going to shoot low and in the direction of the optic. That's the easiest way to remember it. Low optic. So low optic side. And the graph kind of demonstrates why that occurs. Because you know we've got some parallax issues, especially magnified optics, but just basically the way the firearms are designed, the way bullets work, physics has a say in the way things happen. It's going to be low and in the direction of the optic. Now, are you going to notice this? Probably not significantly until you go to a greater distance, or if you have to take a very precise shot from any distance, it's going to be a factor that you have to worry about. So, starting from the prone, defaulting from the prone, whatever my grip is, if I'm using mag on the deck or if I'm using elbow supported, for whatever reason I've got to get the rifle underneath something, or I've got to get lower. You know, maybe I'm taking incoming fire and you know, I just want to get as low to the earth as I possibly can, whatever the situation is. Shooting from this position, off-axis sights, 45-degree angle sights are going to be very advantageous, but they're actually not necessary. All I'm going to do is roll the rifle outboard if I can. If terrain is preventing me from doing that, then I'm going to have to roll the rifle the other way, but chances are, if I'm default right shoulder and I'm already in a prone here, I can probably roll the rifle out. And all I'm going to do, this hand's going to come up, kind of a pull cue grip, providing stability, and I'm going to get pretty damn low. Now I can get as low as I can get my eye behind the optic. I want to make sure my hand doesn't block my view. Obviously, that's a self-correcting action. You'll just fix that. Keeping the hand underneath that rail, that allows me to get the rifle almost to 90 degrees. Now, as you can see, if I was to shoot from this position, how much elevation could I really get? My threat's either going to have to be really far away, downhill, which, you know, obviously curvature of the earth would factor into that, and then I probably wouldn't be able to get a shot anyway, or I'm going to have to elevate the muzzle. What I can do to elevate the muzzle, instead of fighting the gun up and trying to hold it that way, is I can move my hand down and lift. I can roll my hand back and lift near the mag well. I can make a fist. I can do whatever I have to do to get that muzzle up. Not the most stable shooting platform because recoil is going to be a thing, and if I try to bring my hand over the top to keep the muzzle flat, kinda, I'm going to block my optic. So that's an issue. Now if I have 45-degree sights, maybe that's a thing. Maybe then I can use my 45-degree offsets. It makes the life a little bit easier. But like I said, there is going to be a point of aim, point of impact difference. Bullet is going to go low and in the direction of the optic, which I'll show you here. Now, what other factors do we have to be concerned about with this position? Probably the biggest factor I can think of besides the point of aim, point of impact shift is going to be your extreme reduction in mobility. You have to reset from this position. That's one concern. Another concern is how useful is it actually going to be for you? How far away is your threat? What are the angles? What are the differences? What's your actual target size? How far are you from your target? That's really going to dictate how useful it is. But if cover's what I got, and all I have is a cover that I have to shoot underneath, this gives you an ability to get under those low cars, those low vehicles, those barricades, what have you. There are variations of this, but the basic idea is the same. I'm taking the rifle and I'm laying it as flat to the earth as I can, or as off axis as I can, to get it underneath something. Getting behind the optic, when you practice this, actually isn't that difficult. It is a strange position to shoot from because you don't get a traditional cheek weld. So if you're using a magnified optic or something like that, this might be a little more difficult for you. Red dots kind of rule the world when it comes to shooting like this, but there are other options. And it's something you really got to play with, get used to, and see if it's going to work for you. That's the broad strokes of grip for shooting from the prone position. Again, it's actually become kind of a trope now when referring to me, but context is everything. Is it going to work for your particular situation? A lot of people want to default to prone because it's a very comfortable position to shoot from. It's one of the most stable positions to shoot from, but you need to be just as good standing, situation dependent, just as good kneeling, situation dependent. Prone is great, but to me, prone is either an emergency or it's a luxury. It's not something, it's probably not going to be the position where my fight starts from, especially for, you know, self-defense, home defense situations like that. Can it happen? Absolutely. But more than likely, standing is going to be where the fight starts. Prone might be where the fight stops, or where I end the fight from. So being able to transition my grip from prone to kneeling, or from standing to prone, or standing to kneeling to prone, or prone to standing, as smooth as possible. I don't ever want to find myself in a physical position, one of those three categories of standing, kneeling, prone, and be like, where should I put my hand? Or can I put the magazine on the deck? Or can I roll the rifle on its side to get low underneath this car, or underneath this bed? What are my options going to be? In your personal practice, you grab the rifle, you know, dry fire, lay down in the living room, lay down in the kitchen, wherever you want to lay down, and go through these different techniques, you know, standing and then kneeling and then prone, and figure out how smoothly you're able to transition your grip from position to position. Because sometimes you can maintain the same grip all the way through all three positions, but it will affect your stability, so you will have to reset to a certain degree. Again, I didn't get into the very, very fine detail of precision rifle shooting when it comes to the prone position, because even though I can teach precision rifle, I don't focus on the military side of things. I don't focus on the fieldcraft side of things. That's not my lane, because I wasn't a sniper in the Army. I wasn't a sniper in the military. So I'll leave that to the professionals. But in a future video, I will address what I call unorthodox prone for more urban situations, because that's kind of more my lane. I'm Aaron Cowan with Sage Dynamics. Train accordingly.